Have you ever wondered about the secret life of door-to-door salesmen? What an adventure. Today we're speaking with author Eric Orton about his new book, Knock, The Spiritual Journey of a Door-to-Door Salesman. Talk about a wild adventure. Join us inside.
I'm Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
And in 2014, we bootstrapped a year on a fixer-upper sailboat with our 5 kids. We wrote a book about it called 7 at Sea, and that book became a New York Times top 10 travel book.
On this podcast, we explore adventure, connection, and stepping into a more intentional life. And we don't just talk about it, we practice it. We invite you to join us on playful, guided sailing trips around the world.
And if you stick around to the end of this episode, you'll hear our sailing update where we share where we're going, when, and which trips still have space. And you can hear our sailing takeaway where you'll hear from somebody who's actually come on a sailing trip with us already.
Let's dive in. So this is super fun. We're so happy to be part of what you have called the world's worst book launch to talk about your latest book, Knock, The Spiritual Journey of a Door-to-Door Salesman. First, tell us about that book launch. What's that all about? The worst book launch?
Why is it the worst? Well, it's been sort of haphazard because for our first book, 7 at Sea, we went with a traditional publisher, and so things were very structured and organized, and there was a definite timeline, and we had a publicist, and all kinds of stuff was happening. And this one, I've chosen to self-publish for a variety of reasons, and so I've been doing it myself, and it's been spotty. And so I guess, but I'm also very proud of the fact that I'm doing it, that it's out in the world, because nobody's pushing me. It is completely reliant on self-initiative, my initiative, I guess. And I think so many things about the book rely on that aspect that, you know, oftentimes we don't have people pushing us. And so if we want to make something happen in our lives, we have to kind of just hold ourselves accountable. And so it's taken longer than I wanted, but I'm glad it's here.
Awesome. Well, speaking of taking initiative, I know that the two of us host this podcast regularly, but since Eric is joining us as an author adventurer today, I would like to share a little bit of a bio that we rarely talk about on this show. We talk about how we lived on a sailboat. We talk about a variety of things, taking risks and adventures. Here's the bio. Eric Orton is an Emmy Award-winning writer and producer. He is the father of 5. Let's see, this feels like an old one. Eric Orton is an Emmy Award-winning writer and producer, and he has worked on such great shows you may have heard of: Phantom, Les Miserables, Wicked, and he took a massive risk on all of that, left the phenom show Wicked to off-Broadway, and he's written his own shows. He's just a Renaissance man, music, lyrics, book, everything. But in this case, he was producing a show that somebody else had written called The Ark, which is so crazy. It's about a family living on a sailboat, and then
I don't know that Noah had sails, but it was.
Family living on a boat. Yeah.
If he had sails, things might have gone better.
Yeah.
I think they went fine.
I think it was just raining all the time.
Yeah, there was probably very little wind,
and
they weren't trying to get somewhere. Sorry.
That there was a massive life reversal that happened there, which led to having our seminal adventure of living on a fixer-upper sailboat for a year with our 5 kids, and then writing together alternating chapters, 7 at Sea. And then the next unexpected chapter in the journey is Knock, a spiritual journey of a door-to-door salesman. So what can you tell us about what's happening between 7 at Sea and Knock, which is all your voice and all your stories about something totally unexpected for a guy in his 40s?
Well, I think this is the important thing about this book is that when I tell people about it, I say, look, living on a sailboat cracked something open for me in a very important and meaningful way. But I feel like the time, because I came home from, this book picks up literally the day after I stepped off of our boat, Fezziwig, for the last time. This book picks up immediately after that. So it's kind of, in some ways, a sequel. And what I tell my friends that ask is I say, look, this next chapter was far more transformational for me than living on a sailboat. And they're always like, wow, that surprises me. And it surprises me too. I never would have gotten there if it hadn't been for living on a sailboat. There's no way I would have done this. And so living on our boat was definitely a gateway experience to this. And I would say that this chapter, you know, in my life of being a door-to-door salesman has had a huge impact and opened up even other opportunities and things that I would never have considered before. So I'm really grateful for it.
All right, let's cover some of that territory. I'm going to grab this book, 7 at Sea. So this book, 7 at Sea.
I can hold it for you. So.
We wrote together, and I like to tell people that living on a sailboat was intense in how beautiful it was and also in how challenging it was. But I say that writing a book together about living on a sailboat felt more intense to me. And then for you, moving forward, writing Knock on Your Own, that was another experience. But so covering this terrain again, what were some of the foundational things that you felt like you learned in that year on a sailboat that opened you up to the next adventure?
Let's see here. I think
And then we'll build.
I would say I learned that you can take a risk and it can work out. You know, this podcast is called What Could Go Right, and we weren't sure that living on a sailboat was going to work, and it did. There were a lot of variables, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risks, and it just worked out. And we tell that story in 7 at Sea. And I think the idea that you can start something and not have all the answers was really important. You have to have a vision of where you're going. And like on the sailboat, we kind of arrived at a course or a route that we were going to try and travel as a family, but we didn't even have that when we started. We kind of thought, oh, we could go this, we could end up in sailing, we could sail across the Atlantic to Sweden, or we could sail through the Panama Canal to Patagonia, or we could sail back to New York. In the end, we ended up sailing back to New York, but we didn't have all that figured out before we started. And so I guess I came to trust my ability to figure out things along the way, to not have answers before starting. And also, and you and I talk about this a lot when we keynote, the idea that things will emerge, that you, as much as you might want to have all the answers before you get to the next island or the next cove, whatever it is, oftentimes that stuff is just going to emerge as you get closer, and you need to trust that process. So I became very willing to let things emerge rather than trying to have everything kind of dialed in and figured out before beginning.
Nice. It will emerge.
It will emerge. Yeah. Did I answer that question? Your question was, what were some of the foundational principles?
Yeah, the foundational life lessons that you got there. And then how did you make the bridge from living on a sailboat to becoming a door-to-door salesman? Because, I know you're a musician, you are a creator, you've been working in the Broadway industry for over a decade, and you'd worked other desk jobs and had creative opportunities. And then we have what some people call that, like, intermission, right? We both turned 40 that year. We lived on the sailboat with our kids. And then you came back and nothing looked like you expected. When we went on a sailboat, you had written in your journal some years before, live on a sailboat for a year with my family. You never wrote anywhere. It was not a part of your plan in the past to become a door-to-door salesman. So how did this adventure come to you?
Yeah, I was very, very reluctant. I had been offered sales jobs before in my life, and I flatly turned them down and just said, that's not what I do. Not realizing that in so many ways, I actually was already doing sales. I just didn't think about it that way. Mm-hmm. When you're raising money for a Broadway show, you're in sales. When you're managing shows, like we would, advertise and market all the time, that's sales. I didn't realize that I was more of a salesman than I was. But, it's interesting because throughout the whole time when we lived on a boat, I was very concerned about money. You know this. Mm-hmm. I just thought, oh man, I don't know if we're going to be able to come back from this where, you disappear for a year, you go sailing. Who hires that kind of a person? That person's flaky, they're unreliable, they're not going to stick around for long. Whatever reason, I just thought that was a one-way street. And so I didn't know if we were going to be able to continue earning when we got back. And the deep irony is that I was offered my exact same job back. And I was back in my same chair at my same desk doing the exact same thing.
How did that feel?
Terrible. I mean, initially it felt reassuring, but I should back up a little bit. Because several months before we came home, part of our exit plan was that we were going to rent our boat to some friends of ours, another family that wanted to take a boat out. And we said, look, don't buy a boat. It's a headache. We're coming back. Our boat's ready. We're going to, if you want to, just rent our boat from us. Take your family out for as long as you want. Save yourself a lot of money and hassle. And then when you're done, you can just turn it back over to us. So that's what we did. And so, I was talking with the husband of this family, and he's like, oh, by the way, do you have work when you get back? And I said, yeah, I think I do. I had reached out to my former employer, and they were excited to hear that they wouldn't give me I'd asked for a 1-year leave of absence, and they said, that's funny. They'd been very generous up to that point, but they couldn't give me a year off with any kind of guarantees. But when I was coming back, they said, we'd love to have you. We have a spot for you. And so I told my friend, I'm good. I've got work. And he's like, well, if you change your mind, somebody else I know has gone into, he left his career in the Air Force as an attorney to do door-to-door sales. And I was like, what? Because my dad was in the Air Force. He did a 20-year contract. I know what that means to be, what you're promised, what you get when you do a long-term military contract. And so for somebody to decide that this was a better option than being a lawyer in the Air Force, I was like, okay, I'm curious, but not that curious. So I accepted the offer and went back to my old job. But then when I got back to New York, I did a little research on this company. And it's a solar company, and they had just gone public the month prior. And so I was like, all right, this is not a mom and pop operation.
And you were working at an investment bank.
I was working as a consultant at an investment bank, not as a banker, but, I had access to a lot of the information. And, you could just look at the news. And I saw who the financial backers were, and they were the biggest players in the industry.
It wasn't like insider info. It was just, hey, I'm here at work. This is the news.
Yeah, but I was in that space, and I was like, oh my goodness, these guys are really. This is a solid company. This is not like, oh hey, my buddy's got a job working for his uncle, and if you need a job, it was like, this is a legitimate company that's being publicly traded. Has the resources to really. It was a stable opportunity.
Yeah.
In terms of an overall company. And so that's sort of what led me into looking into it. And so once I was back at my desk and I realized, nope, I am a new man. I have gone through this sailboat experience, and I'm new wine in an old bottle, as I say in the book. And so after I did some research, I reached out to our friend who was living on our sailboat at the time. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in learning some more. Can you point me in the right direction? And that's how it began.
Okay. And you know what? There's a little quote at the top of the book that I didn't read in the beginning, and it says, the true story of what sales taught me about life, fear, and faith, and how I tripled my income along the way. So that's a tasty teaser. Like, that's a lot of growth areas.
That's sales right there.
That's sales.
What's going to get people to crack open the cover?
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
So what do you think, what was in it for you? What were the things that you say this was like more challenging and more helped you break down fear in your mind? Do you want to take us a little bit on that journey?
Sure. Yeah, I think, first of all, I went into this and I was like, oh man, this is a world where I do not belong. My perception of sales prior to this was that it's kind of slimy and disingenuous and manipulative, and every single one of us has had an experience with somebody, a salesperson that was trying to pressure us or trick us or somehow get us to buy something that we didn't want or need at a price that we couldn't afford for something that really, and something that was just not a match for us. And so I did not want to be a part of that. But when I realized that this product was something that I really believed in, I felt good about it. And also I realized how much money you could make if you're good at it. And you have to be motivated. You have to take initiative. You have to be self-disciplined. It can go really, really well. And I share all the numbers in the book.
What was that first sales meeting like? Was it just a bunch of slimy people?
No, there wasn't a bunch of slimy people. I think but I felt very other from the people. I went to a sales meeting. They get together twice a week, and they kind of have I'll just call it a rah meeting. They want to, it's accountability, it's motivation, it's all those sorts of things. And, it was interesting because when I wanted to get into sailing, I also felt very other. It felt like this sort of elite, wealthy, credentialed world that I didn't belong in. And this was the opposite. I felt like I'm going into a world where most of these people have not gone to college, or if they have, they didn't finish, or they're, and they're a lot younger than me. A lot of them are in their 20s, and and a lot of them were, I see myself, I worked in the Broadway industry. I studied music. I see myself as sort of artsy, a little bit, maybe a little bit bookish. And even though, I've worked construction and I've helped my dad fix cars and renovate houses, I don't really see myself as a blue collar guy. And this was very, very blue collar, both in terms of education and background. And so I was judgmental.
And working outside.
Yeah. So I went into it and I was like, oh, this is a world where I don't really fit in. And I think I was just kind of full of myself a little bit. And the book, I talk about this journey where I realized how noble what these young men and women are doing, and the kind of guts that it takes to do this kind of work, and the tenacity and the bravery that they have. And I was able to kind of develop those in myself. But I came into it from a very judgmental place. And I think that I felt like there's a superiority to it. And so I was like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the money, but I do not want to fit in with this crowd. My goal here is not to become one of these people. I'm in it for the money, and then I'm gone. And so I think one of the things that I learned was that I'm prideful, and I needed to get humbled, and that there's a lot of nobility in this kind of work, especially if you do it right. Did I have colleagues that were a little bit, in the gray areas that I didn't like about sailing or sales? Yeah, some of them. But not most of them. Most of them were genuine, sincere, and just really trying to help people.
What would you say were some of the challenges? Or I know when we talk about our sailing trip, people always want to know, were you in a storm? Yes, many storms. And we avoided many storms as well. But it's kind of that question. But for this book, what were some of the obstacles that you were up against? You already talked about this sort of philosophical obstacle where you didn't feel like you fit in with this group. This wasn't really your crowd, but the potential earnings were so compelling that you decided to move forward anyway. What were some of the other kinds of challenges that you had to overcome?
I think the first obstacles were being willing to part with what I knew and what was comfortable, because I had a nice, comfortable job working in Midtown Manhattan, and it was heated and air conditioned, and we had a break room, and we had, because of the schedule I worked late. I would get a town car home. I had dental health and, vision benefits, 401k. I had the whole package. And when I was learning about this opportunity, I was like, okay, so is there any kind of salary? No. How do you make your money? It's 100% commission. Okay. Do I drive a company car? No. You use your own car. Okay. All right. You'll need an iPad to do, does the company provide the iPad? No, you provide the iPad. Okay, do I use a company phone? No, you provide the phone. There was none of the structure or the safety net of my previous job was there.
You get like a polo.
Yeah, you get a polo, you get 2 polos to start, so you can at least wash, you can have one to wear while you're washing the other one, but you're expected to make that work, and you got one little notebook that you could keep your stuff in that had the company logo on it. But that's really about it. And everything else, you paid for your own gas, your car, your phone, your iPad, your own data, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, okay, so this is a lot like starting my own company, but the product is, I have to sell somebody else's product, but I have to run my own company. And I actually liked that. But it was hard to say, I'm going to walk away from a salary, from benefits, from a car, home, all the things, especially, with kids. And providing for our family as a single income family, that was a big obstacle for me. That was probably the first one. And then, getting into it, then it's like you literally, when I got assigned my area and I went to start, I can't tell you how terrifying it is to just go up to the door of a complete stranger to talk to them about a product that you sort of have a handle on, and guide them through a process that you've never been through yourself. And the idea of starting from absolute zero is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's just looking into the biggest pit. But one of the smartest things that I did before doing this was this guy who left his career in the Air Force. We were living in New York and he was living in another state in the East Coast, and I drove down and spent an afternoon with him, and I went out and I went knocking with him. We spent, several hours one evening knocking together. And I later came to learn that he's one of the top sellers in the company. And on this evening, we got in exactly 0 doors. We talked to 0 people who were interested and made 0 sales. And when I say sale, the sales is a multi-week process, but I'm grateful that I was able to see one of the best have a night where nothing happened. There was no success. And he said, look, here's what I do. I knock doors from 4 to 8 p.m. Prior to that, it's not worth my time. Not enough people are home. And I have a lot of other things that I need to take care of. And then he also said that you just have to be consistent. You know, that there's work that you do on the front end to, once you create accounts, to move them forward, and that's administrative, and you can do that in the afternoon. And then once you have people that are signed up and moving along, you need to do, there's a lot of wrap-up work. And he said, if you do, a lot of people feel like being a door-to-door salesman is only the time when you're knocking doors. And he taught me that it's also the work that you do outside of that that is just as important. And if you don't do both, it doesn't work. Because
you lose track. I feel like there was one more pretty epic obstacle. It wasn't just like, I'm twice the age of most of these guys. I have a different background from these guys. I'm not one of them. I'm sacrificing all my cushy security pillows and going 100% commission, where I not only do 100% commission, but I also take on multiple costs of doing business to get out there. And you did get a mentor, which is one of the things we love to talk about in our Navigator framework, is once you have the vision of what you're looking for, which for you was amount of money, and then you got a mentor. But there was a pretty epic obstacle coming, because like, when did you start? Oh yeah, show the cover.
If you look at the cover of the book, this guy is he's staring down the street covered in snow. And in my wisdom, I decided to start after the holidays. I'd gone back to my job in October, and I was like, look, I want to be graceful. I'm going to at least give these guys 90 days and give them a chance to replace me. And so when I gave notice, I said, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to start knocking doors after the holidays. I also didn't like the idea of trying to catch people
during holidays.
Christmas, New Year's. I was like, that just sounds brutal. Hard, it's scary enough as it is. So I started in January. And it was freezing. And
East Coast winter.
Yeah. And I share some of this in the early chapters, you know, and the sun is, I talk about knocking between 4 and 8 p.m. and the sun was going down at 4:08. So I'm coming to people's door as a total stranger in the dark. And I'm freezing. And I think the temperatures were in the single digits. And I'm doing this on Long Island, New York. And our car breaks down. The heater stops. Well, first the heater stops working. Then the car breaks down. And winter was a battle.
It was so brutal that year. It wasn't even just like a regular wet, cold winter. It was like snow dump after snow dump, roads getting closed. Like sometimes I didn't know if you were going to make it home because of the weather.
Yeah, the Long Island Expressway was closed multiple times for multiple days just because they didn't want to have the number of accidents that would have resulted. So they literally shut down the freeways. And that meant that I could not get to work. I could not get to the neighborhood where I was able to knock doors. And so it was like,
no hunting.
It was like being shut out on it. Like, like they went on strike on me. And so, yeah, the winter, I knocked in the cold and the dark for the first few months, and shockingly got results. I surprised me. I surprised my managers, and I got traction. And I remember that my main goal was just to get to daylight savings, which, as we're recording this, we're about a week away from daylight savings.
Oh my gosh, January to March just felt like multiple years.
It was the longest 10 weeks of my life. It was so tenuous. And yeah, so I would be out there and, I couldn't feel my feet. I couldn't feel my fingers. I had people just open the door and be like, what in the world are you doing? I'll never forget. I was so ready to come home. I called you and I was like, this is dumb. I hate this. I'm so cold. It was like 7:55, 7:53. And I was like, I just want to come home. And you were great. And you said, you're going to decide what's best for you. Do you remember this one?
I know you had set a goal for yourself that you wanted to knock until 8. And on this night, you wanted to quit 5 minutes early. And you called home and you were so tired in every possible way. I don't remember what you said you were going to do, but I remember that I gathered the kids around and we all knelt down and said a prayer for you.
I think you encouraged me to go till 8.
Okay.
I mean, I think you could have said, like, if I came home, you weren't going to be disappointed in me. Like, you can do it. It's kind of what you said. You can do
5 more minutes. Yeah.
And I always appreciate that you were praying for me and the kids as well. And I went to this door and I knocked and this guy opened it and he's like, what in the world are you doing here? And I literally said to him, I don't know. You tell me. And he's like, get in here. And I went in the house. Anyway, that was one of my first customers to get installed. And I tell the whole story in the book, but I was just like, I just learned a kind of discipline and faith that I never thought possible. And I just saw it blew apart. This is probably, I think, maybe what really matters most is that it blew apart my conceptions of how to earn money. Because up until this point, you went to work and you put in a certain number of hours, or you completed a task and you got paid. And it was very much linking my time and my energy to an outcome. Mm-hmm. And this was the first time where yes, I had to put in time. I put in lots of time.
Lots of time.
But it separated the hours that I worked from the income, because it wasn't just by showing up and doing the hours that I got paid. I had to create value for the customers and for the business. And when I created value for them, then I got paid. And I could create a lot of value, and it was independent of how much time I put in. Like, I could work the same number of hours and create 10 times the amount of value, and I got paid 10 times as much. As opposed to saying, I put in the hours, and so there I get my hourly wage or my salary or whatever it is. And so I uncoupled earnings from time, which I think is really crucial. And most of us, when we have a job, it's like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to work my 9 to 5 or whatever, the hours are, and you get paid. Mm-hmm. But this is like, we don't care how many hours you work, however, how many or how few. If you create the value, we give you the money. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, my job is to create value for the client, for the customer, and for the company. And so that was a key takeaway for me. And I think this is really, for me, the most important takeaway in the book, or the thing that I think shifted me the most, is that it burnt away my fear about money. All through the sailing trip, I had been worried about how we were going to sort of re-enter the world and pay the bills, and would I be able to get a job and things like that. And then I realized that once you're willing to come in and say, hey, I will work for free, I will go talk to strangers, and if I bring their business to you, you give me money, which is what door-to-door sales is. I'm going to go out and find strangers and offer this to them and see if it's a fit. And if so, they're going to buy what you're selling, you're going to get customers, they're going to get your product, and I get a percentage. Once you're willing to do that and are confident that you can do that, you will never have to worry about getting a job again. You'll never have to worry about finding an income, because you can go to almost any company and say, hey, if I work for free and bring you customers, will you pay me?
No risk on their part.
No risk on their part. And they don't have to provide your car or your phone or your tablet or your gas or anything. Then you're bulletproof.
I like what you're saying about the fear getting burned away. And I know there was another lesson too that wasn't about fear.
Okay.
I don't know if you're willing to reveal your secrets on this podcast, but you discovered through your personal endeavors the secret to sales.
Oh, yeah. Okay, for sure. I'm happy to share this.
Okay.
This is the best part. So yeah, it's great to cut away, or it's great to burn away that fear about money. But the secret to sales, I've found, is love. And I'll tell you what that love looks like. Because the spiritual journey part of this is that I was so afraid. I was so desperate for peace during this time that I was reading and studying all kinds of books and praying and trying to really connect with God, because the only thing that brought me peace throughout this, especially these first few months, was zooming way out and seeing the big picture. And when I mean the big picture, I'm meaning like the eternal picture. In the big scheme of things, none of this matters. In the big scheme of things, if I don't ever get any customers or don't make any money, and this is my ruination, in the big picture, in the big scheme, it's still going to be fine because God is going to take care of me. But it's easier said than done. So but what I learned is and so in the course of my study and in my prayer and my meditations, I realized that yes, I have to be smart. I have to know my product. I have to be prepared. I have to be knowledgeable. I have to be practiced. But most importantly, I have to care about these people. I have to love them before I meet them, while I know them, and after I've been paid. I have to love them in all three stages. And when you knock on a door and you have love for the people behind it before you even meet them, that changes something. And then when they're telling you, no, this or that, and they might have very good reasons, and you might not actually have something that's going to be a fit for them. And to love them enough to say, you know what, I can't help you. let's be friends and go our separate ways. Or to say, I know I can help this person. They just don't understand it yet. And love them through their doubts, through their concerns, through their skepticism, through their not wanting to look dumbness. And I think one of the earlier chapters is called Nobody Wants to Look Like a Fool. Nobody wants to look stupid, because when people put solar on their roofs, everybody knows that they've decided to do that. And I was like, nobody likes to look stupid. So you have to...
So no one likes to be embarrassed.
No one likes to be embarrassed. And so you just have to love people through their insecurity. That's probably a better way of saying it. Loving them through their insecurity. And then when it's go time and it's time to put those solar panels on their roofs and they get cold feet, if you love them, then you're going to hang in there with them and you're going to help them to the best of your ability. And not everybody's going to come around. Not everybody's going to come through. But if you love them, that makes all the difference. And then, this was a long time ago. This was 10 years ago. And every now and then I'll get a phone call or a text from somebody who I worked with all that time ago. And they're like, hey, I got a question about my utility bill. Or I'm not sure I understand what's going on here. I'm selling my house and I need to, I love taking care of those people. There's nothing in it for me.
You don't work with that company anymore. It's, completely concluded.
Yeah, it's completely wrapped up. I get zero residuals. There's like no income at all. But I feel so good taking care of them and answering their questions. One, because I like to, for myself, I want to have the integrity that I stand behind what I sold, what I said to them, and I want to be a man of integrity. And I also want them to know that they can call me anytime, any decade. And they have my phone number because I used my phone and it's still the same one. And just that I stand by it, that I was 100% a believer in what I offered them. And I'm glad it was a win then. And I want to keep making it a win now. And I think I can only do that to the extent that I feel love for them.
And I remember some of the other guys, especially some of the young guys, they would make a little money and then they would buy like a muscle car or some fancy car. And then you came in and you just started outselling and rising. And they were like, what is Orton doing? What is Orton doing? And they were like, it's that minivan. He drives that minivan that was like breaking down, like all the things. He's driving that minivan. People just trust him because they see that minivan. That's why they all want to buy from him. And it's like, really?
I just want to tell anybody out there in sales that if you really want to break through, get a minivan. It will change your life. It is the secret to sales.
I will say you wrote a great song called Minivan Man, and it's on Apple Music and I think Spotify, so we'll link it.
And there's a music video on YouTube that's quite good, I must say.
That goes with it, so we'll link to that in the show notes. But it wasn't the minivan. It was the love. And the love was backed by the integrity and the follow through. You took incredible notes, and you always, when a customer called, you always knew exactly what their situation was. You could remember everybody's names, and you started out having it be like what you described, I think, as the longest 10 weeks of your life. And then you got so good at it. It became so easy. You almost never had to knock a door because everybody just wanted to tell their friends and have them work with you. And it goes to that, what you were saying, like, I added this much value this week and it didn't require me to knock however many doors. And I remember you were actually like, I need to exercise.
I'm just driving around
and I don't have to even knock any doors anymore. I'm just like, get 3 sales at one house. And it shifted. It wasn't like your other job where you were like, I've been here for a while. I know exactly what I'm doing and I still get paid for having my rear in this chair for this many hours at a time. This was like one where as you progressed, your skill increased and the value you could add increased and the amount of time to value shrunk. So It was interesting. And surprise, surprise, there become like just little teasers of other opportunities. You moved into leadership and then got an invitation to come back into the theater world in a leadership capacity, and then things get really crazy. So
there's a lot of drama.
There's so many humans.
Juicy drama.
So yes.
There's a sting operation.
Literal theatrical productions, like so much travel. And so lest you think that we have sort of covered the arc of the journey for you, we really haven't. We've really just touched the entrance chapters and coming across that first threshold.
I feel like at the end of
it gets crazy.
The last third of this book goes off the rails.
So if you need a book that you're like, I think I know where this is going, and then it ends up completely off the rails, this is the book for you. If you care about memoirs, if you just like human drama, if you like real characters and character development, if you like adventure, if you're interested in sales, maybe because you're in that or you're contemplating it, this is such a fun, entertaining, poignant, uplifting, and just kooky book.
There's some good dad jokes in there too.
There you go. Stay for the dad jokes.
Well, come for the dad jokes, but stay for the
financial breakdown of your sales career.
There's this guy who I sent an early edition of the book to, and I didn't know him that well. And he was an artist in New York and kind of struggling financially and trying a lot of things to provide for his family. And we talked after he'd read the book, and he said, Eric, I just want you to know that I started reading this book, and I don't remember how far he got in, but it wasn't far. And he's like, I just broke down crying. And I thought, man, he's like, it was hitting a nerve with him, and it was giving him something that he could relate to, and it was helping him. And that meant so much to me that, it's not just a book for dads, but I'll just say to the dads out there who are trying to provide for their family and fighting the good fight to, buy the groceries, fill the gas tank, keep the roof over your head. It can feel like a real battle. I want to honor that battle. And, and if I can help people, men, women that are trying to win that battle, I want to. And it just made me feel so good that it helped this one guy.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing the full spectrum of emotions, the full spectrum of experiences, giving us some value today. I know you talked about adding value, but also saving so much of the good, juicy, not just stories, but insights to come. So if you want to pick up a copy of Knock, The Spiritual Journey of a Door-to-Door Salesman, a memoir by Eric Orton, where are you going to look for that?
You can go to Amazon and just get it right there, or you can go to theawesomefactory.nyc/knock.
Is there going to be an audiobook? That's what everybody wants to know, especially podcast listeners.
Hello, podcast listeners. I'm happy to report that the audiobook, by the time this episode comes out, the audiobook will be available.
And who's going to be the voice of the book?
Ooh, it'll sound a lot like me. I'll just say that.
When we did our other book.
It's my AI bot.
Yeah, right? I think you recorded it before AI was invented.
I did.
So I know, when we did ours, we just got freaked out listening to the actors saying our words. Yeah, 7 at Sea, saying our words and using our phrases and telling our stories. This is so much better because this is like the real deal from the real guy. And I think is there anything else that you'd like the listeners to know about that you think might be helpful for them?
I'll just say that if you read it and you get something out of it, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, obviously feel free to leave a review on Amazon or Audible or wherever, but I put my email in the back, and I would love to hear from you, because it's putting your story out in the world. The only reason I do it, the only reason we do it, is because we want to be helpful. And we're personal because we know that personal is what is the most universal. And we know that when we're the most vulnerable is when the most people can relate. And so that's how and why we do it. And so if it helps you in some way, it's helpful for us to hear from you.
Yeah, if there's anybody you love who's going out to start in sales, which happens a lot heading into spring and summer, around when this podcast will come out, this would be such a gift for that person. They might need the Audible version, but this would be such a gift for them. And maybe forward them this episode as well. And hopefully you and they can be wondering together, what could go right?
Hey there, before we wrap up, I want to give you the sailing update. Lots of new things happening. We do have a few spots left in 2026, but we're mostly sold out. So I'm going to tell you what's going on with 2027. And then at the end, I'll give you a few updates on what's happening this year if you want to jump on a trip. Basically, 2027, we're going to go to the BVI in January. In March, we're going to be in the Bahamas. And not sure if it's going to be the Exumas or the Abacos yet, but just stay tuned for that. April, we'll be in Mexico, Sea of Cortez. May, we're going to be in Bora Bora. So if you want to fly to Tahiti, French Polynesia, and sail Bora Bora, We're going to be going there for the first time in a long, long time. So that's going to be a fun trip. June, we're in Italy. July, we're in Greece. August, we're in Croatia. September, we're in Italy. We're going to go to a second trip to Greece in September as well. And then November of 2027, we're back in the British Virgin Islands. And December, we're in the Bahamas again. So that's the lowdown for 2027. If you want to come sailing with us this year, here's what we have. We just got one extra cabin on our Croatia boat, August 1 through 8. We got a bigger boat than we expected. So we have a cabin for 2 people for August 1 through 8 in Croatia. Then in Norway, September 3rd through the 10th, we have 1 cabin left for 2 people. So that's going to be September 3rd through 10. It's going to be an epic trip. I'm super excited about that one. Italy in September is sold out. Mexico in October is sold out. Bahamas, November 9th through the 14th was sold out. And then in December 7th through 12th, British Virgin Islands, we have a spot for 1 solo male traveler. So that is what is available. If you want to learn more about any of these trips or get the details, visit theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing. Click to sign up for a time to talk with our team, with me, and we'll get your questions answered and hopefully welcome you aboard.
We can talk about trips all day, but it's more fun to hear from someone who's been aboard. Here is a recent guest takeaway.
I wanted to come on the trip because Paul and Heidi said, I think you guys would like to do this and it'd be kind of fun to do. And it just sounded different, something different that I've never done anything like it. And to do it with some friends that have done this before, I was like, I am in. This sounds great. Oh, okay. I was unsure of if I would get motion sickness because well, who doesn't hate feeling? Yeah. So I was really nervous about that. I was unsure. Gosh, about a lot of things. I was unsure about the facilities of what, are we going to be doing? Are we sharing a shower together? Are we, what's that look like? So just the unknown. There was a lot of unknowns, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's something that you feel like you've learned or has been a pleasant surprise for you?
Pleasant surprise has been just being together with people that I don't know and have enjoyed doing activities together and talking and so that has been a pleasant surprise to be able to converse and do fun stuff together. Yeah.
Nice. And if somebody you knew was thinking about coming out on a trip like this, what would you say?
I'd say, oh yeah, do it. Yeah, you'd have to do it because it's so, to me it's a very unique thing, to do. I didn't even realize this was even really an option, or because I never thought about it. So I thought this is a great experience. Yeah.
It's a Wildcat secret.
Yeah.